Hello, welcome to our webinar today. My name is Susanna and I work as a marketing researcher here at SoftLink IC. I'm also joined by one of my colleagues today that can help you out with any questions and comments. Well, welcome to our What's New in Illumin webinar, where we will cover fantastic features and enhancements in our latest releases. Today, we are looking at just a few of the features in our last few Illumin releases, culminating with release 1.015.3. This release adds some great new features and improves on our existing offering. Features that we will cover today include taxonomy, linked fields, request rules, enhancements to our knowledge base, forms, fields, emails, and so much more. It's going to be a cracker. During this webinar, feel free to add any questions in the chat or via the Q&A function. And after this webinar, feel free to stay on as we'll host a Q&A session to help answer any other questions you have about these releases. Remember, you're also able to access Illumin's help section. Here, you can use a keyword search to help you find relevant content. Let's now look at some of the latest recent release features for Illumin, and let's kick off with taxonomy. Let me head over to Illumin and we will get started. Here we are at the home dashboard for Illumin. Let's talk taxonomy. Taxonomy features in a system like Illumin is a fantastic way to tag and classify digital content. Creating a taxonomy can help us sift through significant volumes of information and help our users and us find what we need, enabling instant access and improving the user experience. Having said that, we've added a new taxonomy section in Illumin. Let's find it. It's under Administration, Definitions, and Taxonomy. Here, you're able to create a set of defined terms. You can see I've already created some in the system, but let's show you how it works and create a brand new one. Let's start with a very basic entry for my parent, and that is law. This is my parent, as I mentioned, and now I'm going to start adding some child fields, and I can do that under this option menu to add a child. So let's add another example, civil, and I'll save that. And you can see I'm starting to build a little bit of a hierarchy. Let's add another child field to that main heading of law, and that will be corporate. Now, with this taxonomy, we can actually add children under our children. So let's add an option under our civil field here. And let's call it debt recovery. And you can see I've started to create a fantastic taxonomy hierarchy. Now, in the system, you can show the full hierarchy of what you have available in your system, and you can see that in the image below. You can also view the hierarchy for just a single grouping. Let me show you how that would look. And you can see here is the hierarchy for my taxonomy around vehicles. So what else do you need to know about this great new feature in Illumin? Taxons at the bottom level of the hierarchy can be merged. The ones further up cannot be merged until all their children have been removed. Once you've defined this taxonomy, you can assign it to your requests either via a form or by including the external ID in a CSV import. You can also export your taxonomies to either Excel, a CSV, or a PDF format. And just when you thought taxonomy couldn't get any cooler in Illumin, let me show you how you can search for it. Let's do a search here for the taxonomy cargo. Once that search is complete, you can see I have 3 requests that match my requirement. You can also apply this filter to your two filters. So let's head over to the advanced search. That's where I was going. And let's apply a filter. Let's update my filter and add one for taxonomy. And let's search for that same keyword, cargo. And I'll click on apply. And you can see the same 3 requests that came up in my earlier search now appear here. Once I enter one of these requests, you can see the taxonomy has been applied that includes the word cargo. Now, we've got you covered as far as taxonomy is concerned. If you have lots and lots of these in your system, let me just navigate back to that taxonomy table. Don't worry. We've improved the display of taxonomy for systems with a large number by adding pagination and name filtering. And we've also added the ability to truncate that chart if it exceeds 1,000 items. And we've also improved the load time for these pages. Now, in the knowledge base, taxonomy can be optionally included for display for keyword searching if you've published that request to the knowledge base. But before we see that in action, we do need to enable that. Let's head over to administration and settings. And once we're here, let's choose our knowledge base. And as we scroll down here on the left, you'll see a new option appear, which sits under our keyword search, and that is to search tags and taxonomy. So let's enable both of those and let's head over to our knowledge base and have a search. Oh, I better save it before I head over. I've saved that one. Let's go over to our knowledge base. In our knowledge base, as I'd enabled tags and taxonomy, let's do a tag search for tax. Oh, help if I could spell tax right. I don't know why I always choose these examples that end up being mistyped by me, I should say. And here you can see I've got a request that has the tag tax added. Let's now go back and let's do a search for one of our taxonomy terms, which is cargo. And you can see I've got 2 results here that match that keyword search for cargo as a taxonomy entry. Now, why are there 2? Probably because that 3rd article wasn't published to the knowledge base. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're using this feature in our knowledge base. Aren't taxonomies a great way to classify digital content? It's going to make it so much easier for you to sift through large amounts of information. Let's explore some other bits and bobs we've got in our webinar today. Now, before we whiz off and look at some of our other great features, you might have noticed some changes to our administration menu. In our administration menu, we have rearranged it to group similar items together. You can see we've added a new definition submenu, and this will help you with things like client codes, custom forms, custom fields, etc. We've also added a new submenu for user management. And you can see that that will help you manage your requesters, your teams, and the like. We have added a new mail submenu in our maintenance area, and you can see that here on the screen. This is a great place for you to check anything to do with your emails, such as sent emails or failed emails. We've also had a little bit of a tidy up in our administration and settings area. Now, this area has been streamlined with the options listed in alphabetical order. Much easier to help you find what you're looking for. And one last change in this menu area before we head off and have a look at linked fields. We've got a new history and stopwatch feature that has appeared in the right-hand side of the menu. You can easily access requests that you've been working on recently and also take advantage of the stopwatch feature in Illumin, which will help you manage the time you're spending on your queries. Rightio, let's get stuck into linked fields. Let me head back to my home dashboard. This new feature is awesome. It's now possible to link request form fields so that an update to one will trigger in one or more fields present on your form. Now, there's a few steps in setting this up, but trust me, it's worth it. Let's get started. The first step is to enable the feature. So let's head over to Administration and Settings. And under our authorization option, we will need to enable the opportunity to allow link field creation. So let's save that setting and let's head back to the dashboard. Now, before we actually define those linked fields, we need to make sure that we have the right fields available. And we can do that here in our custom fields. Now, for these linked fields to work accurately, the fields must have a built-in field such as channel, department, or client code, or be one that you're creating or have created. The parent field, the first one that we're going to link them all to, can be an option list, a Boolean, or it can be one of these built-in fields here, such as channel, client code, or department. These are ones with predefined values, and that's really important to set up our linked fields accurately. The child fields, the ones linked to the parent, can be any custom field. Now, linked fields can be defined manually, as we're going to do here for today's example, or you can do them via a CSV import. If you'd like to go down that road, get in touch with our support team for further details. Now, I've been thinking a little bit about this, and what I would like to do is create a linked field where choosing a client code, which is going to be one of these ones, will automatically update my client's name, address, and phone number. So let's see how we can do that. To do that, we need to double check some things in my custom field. So here's my client name field, and I'm just going to edit that so you can see the details on the screen. I've got an option list here of my client names. In order to make sure I can use this later on in my linked fields, I need to make sure that it is available to display in analytics, display in reports, and be searchable. This means that I can get all of my fantastic data collected, and I've enabled reporting. Now, I mentioned there were a couple of others I wanted to make sure, and at a glance using my table, I can see that my client address, name, and phone number are all searchable, ready to be displayed in analytics and reports. With this new feature, I do have the ability to choose a read-only option. I'm just going to show you that here, this one here. Now, put a pin in that because we will come back to this, and it is an option for our linked fields, but we'll come back to that later on. So now my fields are set up and I'm ready to build my amazing form. Let's head over to my custom forms. Now, here's a form that I have been working on earlier, and let me just edit that form. So what I need to do here is I need to pull across all of the fields that I want to link. So as I mentioned, the client code is going to be my parent field, so I'll pull that over, followed by the client name, the client address, and the client phone number. So I'll pull those ones over. So I've added those to my form. So let's click on Save. Now, we've done our fields and we've set up our form. Let's go do some magic in our new Administration Definitions Linked Fields area. So this is new to Illumin, and this is where we can relate those parent fields to the child field and create our links. So let's create a brand new option. And as I mentioned, that client code is my parent field, and my child fields are the client name, client address, and client phone number. And as I was adding those in, you can see that below a field mapping table has appeared. So let's map those fields. What I'm saying here is that in my form, if I choose the client code 100, I want the value set as this client's name. Click on save, and so on for my address, and then my phone number. Now, one of the many great features about this is you can map as few or as many or all of these as you need to get you going. So for the purposes of today's example, I am going to map 2. But you get the gist. And of course, you know that our support team is here to help if you need anything. So my mapping is now complete and I can click on save. So let's have a look at how that form would work. Let's open that form that I was working on earlier. And in this client code area, let me choose my client code of 100. And you can see I have pre-populated that with the details that I mapped in that table. Likewise, if I was going to change this to 200, those details will change. Now, this option is what we could call my open option, in that I can still make changes to the client name by choosing an alternative from this drop-down list outside the mapping that I have defined. Now, as I mentioned previously, there is a read-only option, and we will have a look at that shortly. So that's my client field code mapped to the fields that I chose. Let's now look at a read-only option. So let's head back to my custom fields. And let's make sure that my choice of a department, which is one of my fixed fields, will then pre-populate my case manager and my project code. So what I need to do here is I need to edit one of the values in this particular field that makes it read-only. And of course, I still want it displaying in analytics and reports, and I want it searchable. So let me save that. And this is going to lock my department selection against the case manager and the project code. So let's update the project code to be read-only as well and click on save. And at a glance here in my field table, you can see these two are now read-only. So let's now head over to my custom form, which was the second part of my process, and edit that form. And I'm going to pull across the department, which is the area that is going to be my fixed field, and then the case manager and the project code. Pop him in there. Great. All right, so I'll click on save. And I'm pretty sure you know where I need to head next. I need to head over to my brand new linked fields, and I need to define and map them. So let's create a brand new one. The parent field is going to be department, and the child fields are going to be the case manager and the project code. And you can see that this one is much bigger. I've got 20 results than my last one, but again, I'm not going to map them all. We'd be here all day. So let's map the agribusiness department to a case manager, and let's map it to a project code, sorry. And let's also do budget, because I suspect it's going to be easier for me to enter budget than agribusiness later on when I type this into my form. So I've mapped those two fields, and again, you can go ahead and complete as much of this mapping as you need and click on save. Brilliant. Let's have a look at this field. Let's head back to this form. And here I've got my department, which has been added in, and my project code and case manager. So let's add in that department, which was budget. My plan worked. I managed to type it without any mistakes. And you can see I've pre-populated the project code and the case manager associated to do this. Now, remember, we did make this read only. So even though from the drop-down I can choose another value, it does flick back to that mapped value we defined because we made these two fields read only. Now, I'm sure you're starting to think about all of the ways that you can apply this, and there are a few ways that you can set this up. For the best outcome, have a think about your workflow and then contact our support team to discuss your needs. This brand new feature in Illumin will go a long way to ensure data consistency and provide you better and richer reporting from Illumin. Let's jump out of this one and let's head on to another great feature, which is our request rules. Now, let me navigate over and I'll load the page and then I'll give you a little bit of information about it. Our new request rules feature generates a notification to specific researchers or queues when a request is made that meets a set of defined filters. Here we are in the brand new area where we can set those up. Now, each of these request rules consists of one or more rules and optionally are default. So let's create a new one and I'll give you a little bit more information. For each new request, you can see that we've got some set details in this area at the top. And then we've also got some rules here in this second area. If the conditions for these rules are met, the remaining rules will be skipped for that request. This applies to incoming emails, completed request forms, and APIs. And you can also include a default action. So what we can do here is let's add a rule in, and let's call this my criminal department. So what I want to do is I want to add a rule where any of the filters that come in, and I'm going to set the request values here, and add a filter where if the filter matches department and it's my criminal team, I'm going to apply that filter. I want to be able to assign this to a specific researcher. So you can see the rule is if the following conditions are met, department is equal to criminal, then do the following. We don't need to notify anyone. I want to assign this straight on to one of my researchers. So let's assign this to Cynthia and click on apply. Now, I can also assign a default action here. Oh, let me just remove this second rule. I won't be creating that. I can also assign a default action here, which will give an instruction for when none of the rules have been satisfied. So let's add a default action, which is to notify someone. And let's say I want to notify the research manager. So if none of the rules above are satisfied, this default action will apply. So as you can imagine, these rules can become quite complicated and layered. And as you add rules to each set, the rules are actioned in order. And as I mentioned before, if none of the rules are satisfied, this default action will be used. Let's create another one because these are pretty cool. Let's create a brand new rule and let's call it my urgent priority rule. So I'm going to scroll down and add a rule. So let's select my request values. The first filter I want to apply here is the priority being urgent. So if my priority equals urgent, but I'm going to add another filter here just in case people haven't flagged it as urgent. Let's say, or the request contains the phrase urgent, I'd like an action completed. Let's apply the first part of that rule and let's assign it to my urgent researcher action person, Madia. Madia's going to action any requests that come in where the priority equals urgent or the question contains urgent. I'm not going to set a default action for this because Maida will be able to answer all of those queries and she'll be assigned them. So I'll click on Save. And as you can see, I'm starting to build a list of request rules here. Let's have a look at one I created a little bit earlier, which has some more details in it and just gives us another great example of how the processing works. This particular request rule for Adam Hemingway has a number of rules, and you can see those on the screen now. This has multiple rules to process, and the first rule is that if the channel of inquiry is the phone and it was requested by Adam, it's going to send a notification to Cynthia. If for whatever reason this rule isn't met, for example, the channel was an email, the next rule that will be actioned will be if the department equals criminal or it's been requested by Adam, we'll notify Peter Smith and assign it to Cynthia. So you can see that as the rules are satisfied, subsequent rules will not be evaluated. You can reorder these rules, but they will always be processed from top to bottom. And it's quite easy to do that. I can just use this feature here to move them up or move them down. Now, default rules will always be evaluated last, and they cannot be reordered. I hope that's given you a bit of a window into our awesome new request rules feature. Let's keep going with our webinar for Illumin today, and let's look at some more features and enhancements that we've made across various aspects of Illumin. Let's head over to our knowledge base and analytics. We were in our knowledge base earlier, and what I wanted to show you here, we've added some radio buttons to help with some keyword searching. So you can now search using these radio buttons to help narrow down the results for your searches. Over in analytics, we've added some great reporting functionality around sources and ranking. Let's head over to the dashboard first though, and I just want to show you a request which has some great sources in it first. As you can see, this particular request has some sources which are ranked, and it also has a source here that is unranked. Any source which is unranked, that is, it has a rank of 0, will now appear as unranked in analytics. So let's go over to analytics and have a look at what that looks like. We'll choose our source ranking cube. Let's add our request count in and also our source details. And I'll run this query. And as you can see from the results of my query here, I've got my sources with the ranking they've received and how many there are. You can see though that this new feature, an unranked source, instead of appearing as a 0, now appears as unranked. That is, no stars have been assigned to it. That's going to help you make better use of this reporting around sources and ranking. Let's head back to the dashboard now and have a look at some changes we've made to emails and some other email settings. Passwords are no longer emailed to users on account creation for security. Users should set their password using the password reset feature from the login page. And if you're using SSO or SAML provisioning, the option for a password reset won't be mentioned. Now, you can find templates for this new feature in our email configuration. Let's head over to that now under Settings, Email Configuration, and it's actually in this area here under Requester Templates. Now, as a result of this change, we have changed the details for this one, Requester Account Details Created. And you can see the instruction is to use the password reset from the login page. Obviously, you're free to update these templates as you need. Let's head back to the dashboard now, because I'm going to be bebopping my way around the system to show you all these great bits and pieces we've introduced. We've added a reply from email address in our user management area. So let me head down to user management and teams. And if I open up this options area and click on update, you can see this new option here gives me the opportunity to determine whether to use the team address or the assigned researcher's address in the from field on replies to my requests. A hot tip here though, changes to this field might require configuration outside illumin to make sure those emails get through. You should only really do this in consultation with our support team, so you know you can get in touch for more details. Another handy little feature enhancement we've got here, if I scroll all the way to the bottom, is I can set a default request form for this particular team. So this is going to be used for requests received via email that are assigned to this team. So another great feature to help you streamline your processes. Let's now stay in our administration menu, but we're going to sit over in maintenance and then emails, and more specifically, sent emails. In this area, we've added a brand new page where you can see the successfully sent emails with a link to the request, if applicable. But just a heads up, this only applies from build 1.015 and onwards. Over in our request management area, so let's head over into our custom forms. We've added a rich text field editor or an RTF editor. Let me edit one of these forms. And here in the headings, you're actually able to include RTF features such as images, bold, italics, or underlines into your headings. Let's now look at another great feature where we've added the ability to prevent requesters from accessing illumin or the knowledge base, limiting them only to access via permalinks. To enable this feature, we need to head over to our settings and authorizations area. Here we are here. If I scroll down a little bit, you can see we've added an area called requester settings. Preventing requesters access to illumin and the knowledge base can be enabled by checking these boxes. Now, this is a global application of this setting, and we are able to change it for requesters, which I will show you shortly. Let's save those settings for now, and let's launch one of our permalink forms. So let's head over to maintenance and permalinks, and let's launch this form in an incognito window. I'm going to log in as a requester, Justin. And once I've clicked on login here, you can see that Justin has access to this particular form. Now, if Justin thinks that he's a little bit clever and he tries to edit the details in the browser here, he'll actually be bounced out of the system. So let me just edit this. If Justin tries to return to the login screen, and you can see that he's been told he doesn't have the privileges to access illumin. So let me just hop out of this form and show you how you would give someone access. Under the user management option for requesters, you can choose any requester and update those details. And if you scroll down into their details area, with that global setting applied, you'll be able to individually nominate access to illumin or the knowledge base in this area here, and then save that. So this will allow Adam access to track and view his requests and also the knowledge base. Okay, where am I off to next? Aha, oh, this is a good one. Let's head over to our advanced search. We've added a little bit of a change here. Let me just reset my view from the last search. where I'm able to apply bulk updates regardless of the filters I have applied. So I'm going to update this filter to say, let's say filter for all phone queries that have come in, and click on apply. You can see I've got 52 requests that match that particular filter. Now, if I was going to apply a bulk update to this area, you can see I'm being prompted that the bulk update will apply to the 52 records in this filter. So that's a great way for you to be able to change something en masse after you've applied filters. Oh, and while we're in here, we've also added another great feature. Let me hop into this request. We've always had the option to respond and close. Oh, yes, this one here. But now we've added the option to close and request feedback. So this allows researchers to request feedback without having to send a response when closing the request, like you would if you were using this feature. So another little handy addition to limit those clicks in the system. Speaking of sources, we've already mentioned them once already today. Let's have a look at another extra field we've added when we're reviewing our sources. So under definitions here, I can have a look at all the sources I've got in my system. We've added a date changed and a date created column to this summary screen, which I think is a great way to see how regularly your sources are being used. In terms of privacy and feedback visibility, let's head over to our privacy section, and I wanted to show you some changes we've made to how feedback is visible. There's my privacy. Here it is. Now, let's head down here to requesting feedback visibility. So in this area, when you're editing request feedback visibility, if you'd like to nominate a specific researcher, you will only see this option once you have chosen specific researchers to nominate for feedback visibility. And you're able to add those researchers here by typing their name. If you've not chosen that, for example, research managers only, you'll see you're not able to nominate a specific researcher who has visibility over that feedback. So a nice little tidy up in this section here. Can you believe it though? I have got some great features to share with you before we wrap up today's Illumin, but they're back in my PowerPoint presentation. So let me just launch that one and let's have a look at some more great features. We've added a setting to enable update notification for edits to closed requests. Now, this is enabled by default to maintain our existing operation. It applies to requests with the statuses you can see on the screen there. That is closed, closed as a duplicate, answered from the knowledge base, archived, or spam. You'll be able to find these settings under the email configuration option. And as I mentioned, they are enabled by default. Another great feature we've added around emails is the ability to resend emails that have failed to send. This has been done by providing a link at the bottom of the request with a note that the email needed to be resent. So this might happen if there's a network outage or a failure from your mail server. You've also got the option to show that failed email. We have beefed up our password complexity rules for systems that use Illumin's built-in authentication. By default, these new rule settings enforce the settings you can see on the screen. They have a minimum length, they force the use of numbers and letters, and force the use of a different password. It can't be the same one you just used before. Existing users with a login and a password which does not meet this criteria will need to update their passwords to meet these new rules. And you can do that at the link you see on the screen there under Settings, Authorization, and Password Settings. As an aside here, auto-generated passwords for those such as through SAML or SSO provisioning will always contain numbers and letters which are at least 12 characters long, or the configured minimum, whichever is greater. Now, when working on requests which have sources listed, any source with a URL will be displayed as a hyperlink on the request detail page, as you can see here. We've made some great changes to sources actually in these releases. For Illumin administrators using SAML authentication, a new option has been added in the SAML user provisioning tab. You've got the option to update requestors. Now, if you enable this option, when a user logs in, their Illumin requester record will be updated with any missing information provided in that SAML data. Now, I can't stress enough here, this will only update missing information. There won't be a replacement of any information. You can find this in the administration maintenance area under authentication and SAML. And my last update before we wrap up today, it's been massive, I know you'll agree. We have introduced OAuth 2.0 authentication. That's been added for Microsoft 365 and Outlook email servers. This is for both outbound mail configuration and mailboxes. There's a fantastic help guide which you can access from our help menu by searching OAuth, and you can see that on the screen now. Of course, though, any questions you have, get in touch with our team. Well, that brings us to the end of this new features webinar for Illumin, and there has been so much. I can't believe we've had plenty of updates, enhancements, and brand new features, including taxonomy, linked fields, request rules, the knowledge base, form fields, emails, and so much more. We'll be providing a recording of this for you if you need to pop back and have a look at any of the details. And we're always looking for ways that we can improve Illumin. Our support team is ready to help you if you need it, so remember to get in touch. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's now get started with our Q&A session.